The original dual lands are these goofy cards. They are lands with two land types and nothing else. They enter untapped and they have no upside outside of that, but also no downside, making them some of the best color fixing lands in the game. Additionally, they are on the reserve list, and because of that, command a very high price tag. These dual lands often spark controversy online. People talk about how powerful they are, how they make your decks super busted, and how they might not even belong in casual Commander. But I've always maintained that these 10 lands should really be in every deck you own that they can go into, and you should just proxy them all. In this video, I want to try and argue why that is, and how it's going to lead to more fun and improve players' assessments of decks' power levels. But first, real quick, I have extra bonus content here on YouTube for members and on Patreon. First, I want to address power. These dual lands do not make your deck any more powerful. That simply is not how Magic the Gathering works. I know in the video essay sphere we like to theorycraft and philosophize on what might be, but I am not doing that in this video. These will not make your deck more powerful, that is a fact. If you don't believe me, you can test this for yourself. Take a precon, grab a Sharpie and a basic land, turn it into a dual land, then play the deck. Does it feel really powerful or does it feel like a precon? To save you time, I can tell you right now, it's gonna feel like a precon. Then we can do the opposite. Take a fully powered up RAL CDH deck and remove the one dual land and replace it with a basic mountain. Then play the deck. Does it feel like a low power deck or CDH list? Again, I can save you a lot of time here. The RAL list can still threaten to win on turn 1 or 2, even without the dual land. I would never bring my RAL list to a non-CDH pod, even if I cut the dual land. A fully optimized mana base just lets you cast spells. It doesn't actually literally do anything more than that. The non-land cards in your deck are going to make a much bigger difference between a precon and a CDH deck. Now, of course, couple of caveats. I'm talking about the color fixing portion of your mana base. Obviously, utility lands like Field of the Dead, mana accelerants like Gaia's Cradle, or lock pieces like Glacial Chasm do affect the power level of your deck, but those are in their own category. I'm just talking about color fixing cards. Another card that could increase the power of your deck, but is mostly for color fixing, would be the fetchlands. These are actually the most powerful color fixing lands in the game, better than the duals arguably. If you're in a 3-color deck and have all of the dual lands, any fetch land, which you can have 9 of, in your deck will find you any color that you need. With triomes, any one fetch can get you all your colors, and with surveil lands you can fetch up color fixing plus extra value. And if you have all of those lands plus the shock lands, the fetches let you choose what you need at the right moment. You can grab an untapped dual land or shock land if you need the mana right now. If you don't, grab a triome or surveil land for extra value or fixing. Plus, there are other lands which have the basic land types that can be fetched up by fetch lands, like Mystic Sanctuary. Grabbing this on your upkeep can set you up to draw the right card you need. Fetch lands also help with cards that care about the graveyard. That's why I play fetch lands in my Jace deck. It helps Jace flip faster. It helps me power out delve spells and shuffle my library after I brainstorm. Fetches power up your underworld breaches, trigger sacrifice permanent synergy, and double up landfall triggers. Additionally, with a Crucible of Worlds and any fetch land, you'll never miss a land drop. Fetches can improve the power of your deck, but not in a way that really matters. In casual EDH, especially in lower power brackets like 3 and 2, delving out your treasure cruise 1 turn faster because you hit a fetch land isn't that big of a deal. In most casual games, powering up your Underworld Breach isn't something that comes up very often. Is fetching a Sapseep Forest to trigger life gain effects actually that powerful? The precon with a perfect mana base can't win on turn 1. The CDH deck with a mana base stripped down to just basics can win on turn 1. Therefore, something else must cause the deck to win on turn 1. Everything in casual Commander is context dependent. If you are playing all of the most powerful landfall synergies, or you really need that extra card in the yard so you can turbo out your breach combo a little bit faster, then yes, the fetch lands do power up your deck. But then, are you playing casual lower bracket EDH? If you're playing CDH, just use proxies because everybody does. If you're playing bracket 4, you should still use proxies because it's casual commander. Power in Commander comes from the play patterns, and for the vast majority of decks, a perfect mana base will not change how the deck actually plays. Now, to address the elephant in the room, obviously, I'm talking about proxies. Doesn't this come with extra baggage? Doesn't this hurt local game stores or even me? I mean, I'm sponsored by a game store. Suggesting proxies means I'm losing less money, right? No, it doesn't. Especially with the dual lands. I'm proxying my copy of Volcanic Island. Does this hurt my local game store? No, because I wasn't going to spend $500 on a volcanic island. Hell, if $15 is more than you're willing to spend on a triome, then proxying it will not hurt any LGS since you weren't going to pay that much to begin with. Piracy is a service issue, and the original dual lands are not serviced well. Also, since fully powering up a mana base does not actually make your deck stronger, the fear of proxying to pub stomp isn't relevant here. Although I always found that argument silly, like why does it matter if they actually spent money on the cards or not? They should not be playing a CDH deck in bracket 2 regardless. Of course, if you don't want to use proxies for any reason, that's fine. I'm not your dad, you can do whatever you want. Additionally, I'm a big fan of proxying something when it's really expensive, waiting for a reprint, and then buying a real one later. And then you're still supporting your local game store when you would have normally, but you can use the card earlier. EDH players have always had a strange relationship when it comes to price and the power of decks. If we look at old Salt Score ratings, pre-Mana Crypt ban, we'll find Mana Crypt has a higher Salt Score than Sol Ring, even though they are both colorless fast mana pieces that lead to very lopsided games. But Mana Crypt is expensive, and Sol Ring is $1. I remember very early in my EDH career, I had opened a Mana Crypt from an Eternal Masters pack, and I remember having people comment whenever I played it, saying that putting it in my deck was very try-hard. Yet Sol Ring never got those comments, even though Sol Ring let me cheese out some crazy fast wins. Price can be indicative of power level for sure. The listed price of many powerful cards is high. Demand for a strong card that goes in every deck will affect the price. And if a player is willing to spend money on something like a dual land, perhaps they are more willing to spend money on a less expensive but still powerful piece like the One Ring. With all that said though, Zodiac Dragon is $400. It's not even reserve list. It's a 7 mana 8/8 that goes back to hand when it dies. It doesn't even fly. This is a legitimately awful card. It is not something that will make your deck more powerful, even though it makes your deck a lot more expensive. Price is a factor of many different things. Lands, because they go in every deck, since every deck needs lands, have high demand, which will naturally affect the price. But that demand is not because of power level. It's just the utility and ubiquity of the card. Remember, context is key. A demonic tutor for a combo piece can be strong. A demonic tutor for a Zodiac Dragon is a very expensive play that is probably not very strong. You might be saying, hold up, Con. You don't have perfectly optimized mana bases in all your decks. Your Esper one is missing a few dual lands. And this is true. A part of that is just I'm lazy. And honestly, my mana bases are kinda good enough. Fetches plus shocks and surveil lands and triomes will get you 80% of the way there. You don't really need the OG duels. Additionally, I used to proxy more dual lands, but I kept getting comments about either the price of the deck or comments saying the reason my deck is strong is because of the dual land. And I just found it kind of infuriating that people were looking at the wrong part of the deck, since the land was proxied, so it's not like it actually increased the price that I spent on the deck. And it also did not increase the power of the deck. So I've yapped a lot about how these lands don't increase the power of your deck, so why even bother proxying up a perfect mana base? Because it does affect your deck, just not by increasing the ceiling of what your deck can do, but raising the floor. Because of how the mana system works in Magic, there are some games where you're just not going to get the colors you need. And because of that, you can have functionally a non-game. Having an optimal mana base reduces the odds of those non-games. Avoiding non-games is a really key part of casual Commander. This is the reason people go out of their way to match power levels, talk about pub stompers or combos or whatever else. They want to avoid a non-game where one person wins easily and they didn't have a chance to play. But this goes the other way around. I want to avoid non-games where my opponent mulligans down to 3, where my opponent couldn't find a third color and didn't get to play the game. I want my opponents to fetch up a surveil land to dig for their fourth land, so that they can play something on turn 4. I want my opponents to cast their commander and be able to hold up interaction because their mana base is good enough that they can have triple blue. I want my opponents to bring a goofy, wild 5-color brew with a perfect mana base, instead of having them run a bunch of basics and not show off their crazy cool deck. I'm not saying your deck can't function without a perfect mana base, or that you can't make a decent mana base on a budget, but honestly, why bother? As a casual EDH player, I could not care less if you spent money on the game or not. And if Wizards has chosen to not make it so that you can afford these dual lands, it's kind of on us to just use them anyway. If Wizards wants to make money by selling dual lands, they'll do that. All I want to do is play EDH. That's it. Sticky Azalea asks, what are some lesser talked about categories of cards that every deck should have, such as graveyard hate, removal, the veggies? A big one people miss out on is ways to get around indestructible permanents. There's a lot of times where an indestructible artifact will hit the table and they'll go, oh, my Vandal Blast doesn't work, and then they just can't beat it. Being able to get rid of an indestructible enchantment or artifact is something you should be able to do. Creatures, a lot of people play Swords to Plowshares and Path to Exile, so most decks have that covered, but if you're not in white, yes, also creatures have a way to exile creatures. Indestructible shows up on more things these days. It's very annoying. Definitely have a way to deal with it. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my tier 3 patrons, whose names you see here, and thank you to all my patrons who asked questions. The thread is in the Patreon thing if you want to, put some questions there. Click the link below if you want to join.